it.
Recording. Yes, you may record our voices.
All right, and can you hear us just fine and everything?
I can. Oh,
Good deal.
awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, were you guys discussing the book earlier? Is that what was going on? And then I'm
Yeah,
like jumping in now.
yeah. So we met a couple weeks ago. A couple of us did. So I handed out the book, so everybody has a copy of their book that they get to keep. And we kind of talked about what matters to us, kind of like the activity that the characters were doing in the back of the story. And then they had a couple weeks to read the book, and then we're here today we talked about it a little bit beforehand, and then we're here to talk with you.
Awesome. I just realized I'm totally wearing like a Mona color scheme going on with the yellow and black. That's like not intentional, but I guess it is we're on brand with ourselves.
Right.
Um, well, great. Well, I'm so excited to, yeah, geek out with you guys about self-care specifically, because I love making comics and talking about comics, but I feel like the mental health, wellness, side of things is kind of, I don't know, we can't have fun with our imaginations unless we actually are like functioning in our bodies. So this is something that I'm really passionate about.
Love
So,
that.
yeah, so I guess we have like an hour, correct?
Correct.
Uh,
Yep.
okay. Well, I have like a slideshow about self-care that's full of art and gifts and visuals to accompany me walking you through making a self-care plan. And
Okay.
it's kind of an idea seed bomb. It's sort of like all my toolbox like crammed into one little talk. So I'm gonna sort of like try to flip through quickly, but so hopefully it's not too overwhelming. But I
Okay.
kind of like to just like, here's like the whole thing and what sticks, sticks, and what doesn't, you don't, is okay.
Sure.
Um, so, and yeah, and definitely have space in there for questions and yeah, touching base with you guys and what your care life looks like. Um, but yeah, well, I guess I'll just, oh yeah, and I'm Laura Lee. My pronouns are she and they. And I'm um talking with you guys from ancestral Monacan lands, also known as Charlottesville, Virginia. Oh, and
Nice.
I call redheads from Virginia Virginiers. So I
Oh.
was, um,
Love
we're
that.
here to heal the legacy.
Yeah.
Uh, well, awesome. I guess I'm just gonna like dive in.
Let's dive right
Um,
in.
so let me get my screen share. Where is that?
Should be on the bottom.
Oh, I see. There it is.
Perfect.
Staring at me in the face. Do whoops. Actually, that's like in the middle of my talk. You want to go? Awesome. And I guess normally when I start a talk or a workshop, I have a little 5-minute thing here of where I'll just talk a little bit about who we are and how we ended up doing what we're doing. So this is little kid me, who is a shy, sensitive weirdo. Even though now we realize that we're actually low support needs autistic. So suddenly my life makes a lot more sense. But when I was young, I definitely channeled my energy into drawing a lot. I think because in real life, sometimes it's harder to make yourself visible. So I think drawing is a safe space where I didn't have to worry about being like too weird or like too morbid. Yeah, there's like my weird comics from middle school. But I also really love drawing emotions. And I think this is also because it's when I was in high school that I really started to sort of mask part of me that I deemed like, oh, we can't be that person in the real world, but we can be that person on paper and in safe spaces like, murals. So I didn't go to school for comics. I went to school for education because I love art and I think it should be accessible for everybody. But I didn't think that like I had anything special to say. But so I just did my art as sort of my art therapy. So this was like my first stage of self-care. It was like I worked in a sketchbook for years. And so I had like a quota where I had to fill like 7 pages every 2 weeks. So this is how I sort of just built in the practice of we're just going to draw about everything and dump all the random thoughts out of our head, dreams, recaps of books we read, copying gourds, or just doing even writing. So this is where I started to sort of develop my visual vocabulary, but also where I started to use myself as a character. So working in the sketchbooks, oh, it's really what helped me be a much more present person because having that safe space to dump all my thoughts. So when it came to like figuring out what to do with my art, I like had no idea. So I self-published my sketchbooks, my illustrations, and so I just, didn't really fit in anywhere out there in the art world because this is before graphic novels were like a section in the library. So I had no idea that that was even a thing until when I moved to New York and someone looked at my art and then immediately was like, "You should be making graphic novels, you dummy." And I was like, "What's a graphic novel?" So I didn't even know that they existed until I was 27. I'll just say that again, 27. So suddenly I realized that all these drawings I've been making, these are like scenes, these are stories. So I thought, well, I'm gonna give this a try because I don't know what I'm doing. And guys, it actually worked. I found people on the way to help me because like I didn't know the language or like this type of storytelling. So I, joined a studio and I was like, "So why do you guys use blue pencils?" So I feel like this is also why my graphic novel style is like different than other people. It's sort of this magical realism, half in the character's head, half in reality. Even though now I'm like, oh, this is like masked me and unmasked me is kind of what we were actually drawing about. So my books all explore mental health in different ways. So Will is more of my sort of workaholic character. Like, I'm going to stay busy so I don't have to like deal with my feelings and trauma and stuff. So I like to, I don't know, I love comics as a medium for talking about hard emotions because it's so cute. I feel like it kind of makes it easier to deal with. But we have a musical of this book, and it's actually way better than the book. So I say, if you're into musical theater, we have a lot of videos online. Because yeah. And since I love sketchbooks, I have a book of sketchbook prompts. And if any of you have a sketchbook, I encourage you to keep it as a resource because I use so many drawings from my sketchbooks like for reference in my graphic novels. And then of course you guys know Mona. She's the latest book, and this is the one focused on like depression and anxiety as like, okay, how are we going to draw about this experience? Um, and yeah, I wanted the matter to shift and change shapes, but also I have this sort of bit of yellow that represents like my genius, my guardian spirit. Because I wanted the story to not just be a bummer. So it's about how art and love and self-care can really help us deal with that little voice that's like, you should just go hide because no one likes you. That matter. So yeah, so that's about me. I'm developing a new book right now, but I've mostly been making zines in COVID. So I've just been making zine disease and self-publishing art and also working a lot on just unmasking who I am. So oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to go to the next slide. So I feel like I've been my latest art project. Okay. So transitioning to self-care, that's enough about me, even though this is still about me. Uh, so my self-care started off as, yeah, drawing about ourselves and as sort of acting out different emotions over the years. And this is how I do my graphic novels. And this is like art that I just recently did about unmasking autistic and some of that experience. So art to me is definitely like, I love this as a self-care practice. It's something that I've always had as a resource. And I think artists are really lucky, whether it's music or writing or drawing or whatever way, like it's so essential to lean into that for our wellness. So if you are into that, then I art or dare you to try drawing out your matter, which could be like as its own character, or it could be something that you're interacting with. Yeah, this was a prompt I actually put in Sketchbook Dares before we even made Mona. This was like a little teaser, I suppose, where I was like, I feel like we should draw more about these hard things. Um, and when doing a lot of my art therapies, I'll often use myself as a silhouette instead of drawing all the details because it really doesn't matter. It's not supposed to like look like me. Um, and so, but also the matter could be like a solid color as well, like in Mona, taking different shapes. So when doing this sort of drawing about a part of you as a character, I find the things that can help us unlock it is first labeling what emotion is even going on. I feel like it takes me a while to journal and even figure out like this is an emotion wheel. I find it so helpful. I use it all the time to sort of help me nail down like, well, what are we feeling? Something in this category and like hone it down. So this is like first step to that emotional awareness. And then to me, the second part is connecting with the body of like, where in my body am I feeling this? Or what situation am I feeling this? So sort of not just thinking about it, but like feeling about it, if that makes sense. So this is what helps me with unlocking some of my art therapy. And I could talk like a whole thing about that, but I'm going to keep going because our talk is going to be more about embodiment. Because embodiment means being in your body. And ironically, making art about my feelings can kind of get me out of my body and to in my head. So that's why a lot of my self-care practices, like I don't want to just draw about everything because I need to do things that actually keep me in my body and not just sort of hang out in my imaginary land. Because I kind of got lost in there for a while. It was like, I don't want to be in my body because my head is so much more fun. So the rest of our talk will mostly be about stuff that helps us be like in our body, which can be active stuff. It could be chill stuff, meditative stuff. I feel like these are all based on like me and friends. Actually, these are more like friends of mine of different things that the people I know do to help us to stay in our body and feel connected in the present. Things that I'm a big fan of are sort of here. So this is sort of like my favorite stuff, which is like dance and hiking and Thai massage, meditating, sleeping, and that's my shaking machine, which I've been carrying around to like family gatherings, and it's been really fun. I feel like libraries should have one of these in a corner so you could just like stand on it and just like go hang around the shaking machine for 10 minutes and just be like,
Yeah,
it's very helpful for the
yeah, I'm very curious about that. We have a teen advisory board, so maybe I can bring that up to the teens. See if we can put that in the teen area. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it just sort of like has a motor in it like this. So it just sort of like
Yeah.
shakes your fascia like up to your belly. Unless you're like a kid, then it'll like shake your whole body.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like something I learned about in like autism culture is something people get it for weight loss, but we're like, no, we just like the shaking medicine because also, yeah, that's how animals heal from trauma is they shake. So yeah, so get one. Okay, so now we're gonna start to pivot to the actual self-care plan. So I put a blank one and a sample one in the back of Mona. But this is what it started off like years ago, where I just wrote down like, what's 20 things that we know help us heal from stress? So self-care is really, these are things that help us heal from stress. But as you can see, like I've kind of expanded it so it's like out of control and detailed. I'm gonna go through these different categories. And I share this because I don't want it to seem overwhelming, like, oh, you have to do so many things to take care of yourself. It's more of, I'm turning my life into self-care. I'm like trying to identify all the things that, all the different tools that I can use. So it's less about like doing more and it's more just sort of emotional awareness and more options. Because really, I want everything I do to be self-care. So we're going to make a plan for you guys. So you'll just need a piece of computer paper and we're going to fold it into 8 squares. And you can also just draw if you don't want to fold, you could like draw lines to create 8 squares in whatever way you like. For this, I did like hot dog fold, hamburger fold, and then like folded in the 2 ends because also that's the same format as a mini comic. So I'll let you guys fold it up. Do 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 do.
Oh, Jeopardy music.
Folding. Now I'm like, ooh, what's a song with folding?
Got it.
Cut it. I just did it in half. Did it in half again. I don't know. I folded it like 3 times and got 4.
No, you got it.
And now I'm refolding it.
You got it.
Yeah, you also can, if you just want to like draw, you can just like wait.
I need a ruler for that. I'm not drawing straight.
It can be abstract.
Yeah, fact.
Yeah.
Yes, it's, I know, and in the arts, everything is just abstract. As long as it's intentional.
Right.
Yeah, so we're going to go in through each of these boxes and I'm going to share what is sort of in my category and the things that vibe with you. Maybe be like, oh, I also need that. Maybe I'll add that to mine, or maybe it'll inspire some other things. So the first category is physical needs. I feel like this is what most people think of when it comes to our health. You know, these are things that help our actual body. And so yeah, things like sleep, to exercise, to like, let's see, like hugs and limiting caffeine and
Cheese levels.
oh yeah, cheese levels. Yeah, it doesn't have to all be serious. Well, people in my life know that I really do have an unapologetic cheese addiction. So my partner Josh will be like, "How are your cheese levels today?" I was like, "They're kind of low. Can we get?"
I love that. I need coffee level then. High coffee levels.
I call it the 3 C's when I'm like, if the Laura Lee starts to malfunction, we normally need cheese, coffee, or chocolate.
Ooh,
One of
nice.
those 3 things.
We're usually C's, Ashley.
Charlie,
And
my
I have
cat.
in bed versus sleep there 9 hours because I don't actually sleep that whole time. I just think it's important to like be in bed and in the dark because I have like
Yeah.
a whole sleep obsession. So yeah, any questions about any of these various things? I feel like some of them probably, I feel like most of them probably make sense. Oh yeah,
What's
shaking machine is in there.
what's pumpkin time?
Oh, so as part of my sleep obsession, I identified that I need to leave social gatherings by 7 o'clock to like get home and go to bed like early bird pumpkin time. So that's when I turn into a pumpkin. And I've taught all my friends because it used to be really painful to be the first one to leave everything. And then like, where
Yeah.
are you going? So now they're like, oh, have a good pumpkin time. And I'm like, yeah, I got a pumpkin out, guys. And they're like, okay, sweet dreams. So I've like normalized it because it was really hard for me to feel like lame, like, oh, I gotta go. And
Oh,
everyone's like, yeah.
yeah.
And also want to mention that something like the shaking machine, you know, I have it here under a physical need, but maybe you would put that under like an emotional category because it helps your mood. So some stuff in self-care, you can put it in like different categories. So it's really not like, you know, like
Right.
super, yeah, rigid. It's sort of like wherever it feels right for you. But cool, I'm gonna keep on going. So the next 2 categories are emotional needs and mental needs. And I added a slide because I noticed that people were really confused about which was which. Because I found people were like, well, my emotions are up here. I was like, actually, your emotions are like down here, but a lot of us are so up in our heads that we think that they're the same thing. So this is how I split them up. Emotional needs are about feelings, about our heart. It's more about our mood and energy versus mental needs. That's the stuff that's more about thoughts, ideas, logic, and also where I'm managing sort of like my input and output, like stimulation. So, because that's where I get overwhelmed oftentimes is more of a mental shutdown versus like emotional, you know, they're like different kinds of melting down. Yeah, it's like emotional is like meltdown and mental is more like overwhelm. But either way, yeah, so this is how I divide them. So the emotional ones, they're not organized. It's just lots of stuff. And these are things that I've just identified make my heart happy. They lift our mood, they balance our mood. And so some of these are classic self-care things like doing like face masks, but also like phone dates with friends, therapy if you have access, Care Bears and cat videos, because gotta keep it playful.
I have
So
my
yeah, any
own
questions
personal
about
blog.
things in here? Um, because like snail mail, I love sending snail mail.
I had a question about the physical needs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, I know some people, and me too, like, some people don't feel good enough about themselves, where they don't like physically take care of themselves. And then when they try, it's painful, like physically and mentally. Like, how would you cope with that?
Oh my goodness. You would have to just start really small.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel like you just have to start really, really small. A way
Like
to,
that time and
to gift yourself that love in a way that you'll actually receive it. Because if you're like resisting caring for yourself, it's almost like you got to sort of sneak around the landmine in like a subversive way. So like what's something like identifying, something small that would be able to sneak in without you putting up the defensive, like we don't deserve that wall. Because it also could be doing something that's shared, like shared care, which I'm going to talk a little bit more later. Because sometimes if we're not a good enough excuse to do something, if there's someone else involved, I find that can help me get it behind something, because then I'll think like, oh, it's not just about me. So sometimes like if it's a shared thing, then that's like helped me. It almost like holds me accountable. I don't know if that makes sense. But that's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up. I know. And also just rolling around, like, see, no, rolling around. It's very satisfying and silly. Okay. And any questions about emotional needs, which maybe some of these resonate with you and you could like write it down, or maybe you have different things. I find the scent scene changes really helpful. So I use incense a lot. Like if I feel kind of stuck emotionally, then like lighting incense to help me get like unstuck and like do scene change. Because something about scent, it like gets in the brain and loosens stuff up.
Mhm.
But
Okay. What's your favorite type of tea?
oh, I love Tulsi tea. I have like 5 different kinds of Tulsi because it's a Ayurvedic plant called holy basil. So Tulsi with rose, Tulsi with turmeric, Tulsi with peppermint. So yeah, I got a Tulsi problem.
What's your favorite flower?
Flower. Oh, whichever ones that I'm given.
Oh, there you go.
And actually, whenever I get flowers, I then share them with other people I see. So like I had a bouquet a week ago from my partner Josh, because it was our 2-year anniversary. But then as I saw other people in our friend group, I gave each of them flowers on the way. So now I only have one left, but I just love that they're all, so anyway. So I have my weird flower. I have a lot of rituals. I feel like this is how I can also control obsessive thoughts and build connections with others. So then I think, oh, we're not alone, because I think of everyone else with a flower, and then we all have the bouquet. And in my imagination, we're like all connected.
Oh, I like that.
And so a lot of my tools I build because I'm struggling to be like, oh, I feel isolated. How can I like come up with a system to help us remind ourselves that we're connected, or use our imagination? So building your self-care plan, it's sort of like often because a need was not met, or a boundary was crossed, or you need support in a way and you didn't have it. So that's where I'm like, well, what will we need for like next time? So yeah, this makes me look all put together, but it took a lot of time to figure out all these things.
Yeah.
But now
I
my
think-
life is full of self-care, like everything we do.
I think we have one question.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you struggle with hyperfixating on stuff and then like putting everything else off? Because I definitely struggle with that, and I wasn't sure if you had any like tips on that or anything.
Yeah, the hyper focus. Oh man, I really struggle with obsessive thoughts. And the hyper focus has been great sometimes for making a graphic novel, but then it's really not great sometimes when, you like ignore all of your friends while you're making that graphic novel, and like don't feed yourself because you're so, obsessed. So I guess that's why self-care became my obsession. And my thing lately is breath work is my new shift for when when I'm like getting too tunnel vision or too obsessive, or basically if we're like thinking about things that are not helpful for us to think about, or we don't want to think about anymore, is that I've been learning about breath work. So I will shift back to my breath and connect with that. So that's like our new obsession. I'm actually teaching my dad about this now, because he's like, was like, oh yeah, you're like always breathing. So it's almost like pulling a song, like, oh, if I'm struggling with this song, well, we'll put this song on our head to replace that. So instead of the song, it's like, oh, we're going to connect with our breath, because it's like a record that's like always playing. So that's been my latest thing for helping me. But the first thing is just to recognize when you're stuck in that loop and like, oh, we want to, we need to get off this mental track that we're on. Well, actually, oh, that takes us to the mental needs, actually, because this gets into like some processing stuff. So like for me, I also weave in a lot of behaviors to help clear my brain. So making sure that I have like alone time and silence. And this brainwashing thing I do, I take dry leaves and I like to like rustle them in my ears, and it like cleans my brain of like all my thoughts. I don't know.
No,
It's
I'm not feeling that one.
oh no. And I've been teaching my friends, and now my friends will do it to me. It was like, oh, I love you. Like
We have a couple different reactions to that in this room. One person loves it, one is not so sure about it. That's so
I know it's
funny.
like a very ASMR, but it's something that I
Yeah.
just did for myself because I was literally in the woods and I could not tune out my thoughts. And I was like, I am not being present in the woods. And I was just like, let's like drown it out. Um, and yeah, then also figuring out where we need to have limitations. I'll talk more about boundaries as well. And yeah, some of this is autistic inspired, like giving myself permission to not make eye contact, and that it's okay for me to ask clarifying questions, even if it's annoying. Like, and like doing voice messages because I hate texting and I need to hear my friends' voices. And because to me, it's like helps me feel connected rather than like seeing language. So these are all things that I've just identified like help us, with managing all the input that's like constantly coming in, plus all of the thoughts, and like the technology. It's like, so yeah, mental wise, it's a lot of stuff to, I feel like more so now than yeah, in previous times. Um, but yeah, any questions about these various things?
So like sometimes I feel like the depression can like get to that certain point where it feels like you can't do anything. Like I remember me and my friends, we were in a really bad spot after a while. And we started losing the energy to do like everyday things. Like one of my friends was like, it got hard for them to just get out of bed and take a shower. And it got hard for me to like eat and I love eating. So that was a big thing. But like how do you get back into that realm? Like it's kind of hard to get back into.
Oh, well, I'm actually getting to that in a few more spots. So if you hang in there, we will answer
Love
that.
that.
Oh yeah, because I talk about it. Yeah, it's basically the pivoting when you get stuck. So we'll breeze through here. So food medicine is the next category, which also would include supplements, medications, anything that you're like putting in your body to like help your body and your mood and your mental, all those things, those categories that we just went through. So these are all things based on sort of like my personal health is like, yeah, vegetarian with some intestinal issues. But I also use different herbal friends, for with mood management. So, but I'm not a doctor, so do your own research. And, if there's like a local herbalist, I swear, like go in there and like tell them what emotional stuff's going on. And they'll like be like, oh, you're depressed. Like, yeah, like, like rose is good for the heart. And like, oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oh, apparently not.
Not
Speaking of
enough tape. Nothing to see. Like linden and lemon balm are good for like anxiety. So I feel like I definitely advocate for the plant and food friends for like, leaning on, just to balance the conversation. So then stress warning signs is our next category. So yeah, this is like when we're talking about like meltdown time. So this is a list of my stress warning signs and it's really just to hold myself accountable. So like logically, I'll be like, my fingernails are bloody because I've been like really gnawing at my cuticles. And like, and I have like less appetite than usual, and I'm not sleeping as well. And maybe, and I'm being really negative with my language, like, oh, those are stress warning signs. Maybe we should like pick something from our self-care plan and like do it, or like pick someone from our support system and reach out. Because really you want to catch these signs before you totally burn out. Because our society really tells us you're not like worthy of getting care unless you're like at rock bottom. But it's like, I know, it's like, no, actually it's our responsibility to catch us before we get to that point, because that's when yeah, it's like harder to pull us out. But unfortunately it takes like just some time to sort of even figure out what are our warning signs, to figure out how to like, notice before we like totally hit that wall. But when you do, like, which totally happens, so don't beat yourself up, because like, yeah, you kind of learn through going through, these cycles of patterns. So when I find that when I'm sort of stuck and I'm sort of like in a loop, like we don't know what to do with ourselves and we can't make a smart decision, I have those like a little post-it of like, well, our red flag ritual, sort of like red alert, just go take a shower, put on your some cute PJs, make some tea, like hug the cat, take a nap, focus on our breath. Almost like like self, you can't make decisions, like do this. Because sometimes we just want someone to like tell us what to do. And also just HALT is a great check-in system of just even tuning in of like, oh, are we hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because sometimes when you're really not doing well, it's hard to tap into that emotional awareness. So this is like very logical, like, okay, this is like just supposed to do this now. Because yeah, because we are not making the best decisions when we're in that position.
Really.
So yeah, so this is stuff for like the getting unstuck. I'm curious if you guys have anything that helps you. I feel like all my friends who have dogs, like that's what dogs are for, like curling up with dogs.
I have a cat and I go to him if I'm feeling sad or angry or whatever. I pick him up and squeeze and love him. And that's how that helps me.
My dog sometimes annoys me. He's only like 6 months old, but he's also like a lunatic sometimes,
Yeah.
and he's also really hilarious.
I'm sure that helps too.
Tater is special.
Yeah.
Out of it because he would like to go outside. He ran to my bedroom this morning to say hi to me.
Yeah, animals are they definitely help.
Yeah. I don't know if there were any questions about like stress warning signs. I sort of like zoomed past. I feel like a lot of this is kind of like, some of it's kind of universal and some of it's specific to me, because like the loopy outbursts is sometimes it's a new thing. When I kind of melt down, I kind of stutter, where I get stuck on like the first word of a sentence and I can't get past it. So it's like, I call it when I'm like stuck in a loop. So it's like, yay, a new out, expression of our stress. Fun.
Yeah, my mom calls it getting stuck in the mud.
Stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
Stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
She's a therapist, so she knows how to handle more situations, luckily, so I'm in good hands.
That's not mud.
Like that. Stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just space out while talking, and I'll say something, space out, forget what I'm talking about, ask what I'm talking about, say a word, then space out again.
Oh yeah.
That
I feel
happens.
like trouble communicating. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's definitely something put to add in there. I'm always like, ooh, is there something I don't have in my list yet? Because I'm like adding, because I just want to like add everything. Okay, the next category is support system. So yay, this includes, real people and imaginary. Because I feel like if you have, even if you have like character friends, like fictional character friends, like I feel like, they're like even our web, or like my ancestors are in mine, my historical mentors like Jim Henson. So, you have your imaginary ones, but of course it's the real life ones that are the ones who are going to help you when you're in crisis. So I think of my tribe as this garden because it's constantly changing. There's constantly people coming into my garden. you know, they're one kind of flavor, but then, you know, life changes and then they sort of get moved to a different part of the garden. And it can be really hard when that changes. But like in the back of Mona, the top 5 people in my support system, I feel like only like one of them is still in my top 5 support system. So it's been kind of hard to like, you know, as people change. So that's why I just embrace that it's alive and it's okay that people are coming in and coming out. So this is like my current garden. So sort of like my top 8, you know, like MySpace top 8, like, you know, back in like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I
Um,
do.
and it's changing, like who is in my sort of top 8 of like who I'm like really, you know, I make a lot of effort too of like make sure I'm like cultivating these relationships and like holding mental space for these people. And because sometimes I get like kind of wrapped up in myself. I'm working on being a better friend as I unmask. And I encourage everyone to basically share your self-care plans with the top people in your support system. Oh yeah, and also in the middle, I'm not by myself. Like it's me and all myselves and my parts and my genius and yeah, all my imaginary helpers. So I feel like the middle of that circle, like you're not actually alone in the middle. So that's like it's a big thing for me. Like, so I am my primary partner. I'm my primary caregiver. So, because yeah, it's not all just about everyone else helping you. It's a little accountability for us there. And yeah, don't mock each other when you share your self-care plans, because really you want to figure out what you have in common. Because the things that you have in common that you guys like to do for care, you know, this is where I consider us shared care bears. Because I used to have this pattern where with self-care, I had to like isolate. I must go be by myself, and then I can do the stuff to take care of me. You know, even things like eating, you're like, I want to be alone and eat my cookie by myself. So what I've been working on is like figuring out what other people's care that they need and then doing it together. So like, hey, you guys also want to draw on these placemats so we don't have to make eye contact after Thanksgiving and just like draw and talk, like cool. Or like, you know, sharing food. This is a peek at my dance tribe that we also do like Thai massage jams together. Instead of like, oh, I'm gonna go home and sleep by myself, it's like, actually I can take a nap with this, you know, be like with this friend, be like, hey, let's just lay under this tree for a minute. Because also sharing the self-care and like taking it out of like the privacy of our home is part of how we're changing the culture around us. Because I feel like sometimes it seems indulgent to like give ourselves a nap, but it actually is fighting capitalism and white supremacy culture, just to put it in like a big picture mind frame. So taking care of ourselves, it's not just about us. It's actually like very like, you know, as Audre Lorde here saying, a active political warfare, because actually to honor our body and our health instead of just, you know, basically working ourselves until we run into the ground, which is kind of what our culture expects of us in this colonial capitalist, you know, country that we're in. So really self-care is about, yeah, like reclaiming our own autonomy and our own worth, because the world is telling us that our health is like not very important. So I know, just to like do the big zoom out, you're like, this is why it's important to nap, because this is how we change, like overthrow, you know, systems that are oppressive. So that's why the 8th category is boundaries, because it's great to identify all these things we need, but we actually have to fight to like protect our needs and to get the things that we know are healthy for us, and to not end up in situations that we know are going to be unhealthy. So yeah, so boundaries, for me, I have lots of, you know, 3 basic categories. I have boundaries around work, technology, and social stuff, because those are 3 areas that yeah, they can kind of overrun me in different ways. Because like I will totally like work myself into the ground versus like, actually, I'm not allowed to do flow state, like do art more than 6 hours, because after 6 hours, the art starts to take a turn and it starts to get bad. And then so instead of like pushing myself through, be like, we're just not going to draw after 6 hours. That's good enough. And having, you know, boundaries around technology and expectations, but then also social stuff. So like, you know, leaving places by 7 and saying no to things. And like, I always set a timer, like when I enter, like if I'm going to like, you know, a party or something, like a bigger social thing, I always set a timer for like 90 minutes in, because I find that often after 90 minutes is sort of like I'm kind of full, because I feel like I don't do as much stuff as I used to now that I unmasked. So yeah, build in ways for me to sort of not just get swept away and then get to that burnout point. And oh, the spoon theory, this like ties in what we were talking about energy level earlier, about sometimes things like getting out of bed takes a different number of spoons than like other days. So this is just a way to talk about your energy. So if you need to like express some boundaries, it's a lot easier to talk about it as this third entity. So it's like, oh, the problem's not me and the problem's not you. It's actually that I just have limited energy. And so I have to be intentional about how I use it. So if someone's like, you know, like, oh, can I tell you about my big book idea? And I'm like, oh, I've just been like writing all day and my brain is fried. Like, I don't have the spoons to handle that right now. Then it's like, okay, cool. So, and also helping us just recognize like what are the things that use up spoons. So I know if I want to go to an outdoor show that's like out in the hot sun and it's like lots of people and it's noisy, these are all things that are going to drain my spoons. So then I'll be more aware going in of like, okay, maybe I can only go to that show for 30 minutes and then we're like, that's all. Because yeah, the spoons get used in different ways. And I also use social scripts to help with setting boundaries too. So just things that I can just pull out of my mental file cabinet to help me with certain transitions, or to advocate for myself, because like I'm always the first person in the group to be like, hey, I know you guys are having fun, but actually standing out here in the sun is giving me a headache. Can we like move over to like under the trees over there? So I've collected a lot of sort of scripts to help me with navigating situations. And I sound kind of robotic too. We're like, I'm saying something that I know I'm supposed to say right now. But yeah. And yeah, so closing up this part, the last thing to consider is customizing your self-care plan according to your needs. So like mine has a lot of stuff that's inspired by autism, and also with my needs as like, you know, being a creative vessel for ideas that yeah. So so a couple ways that mine is specialized for me is that I have a lot, I think I mentioned a couple times, yeah, my sleep obsession. Because I've been a lifelong insomniac, and sleep and flow state of art are really connected. Because yeah, like the brain really needs time to rest if I'm actually channeling a lot of information during the day. So I, you know, have my entry ramps where we like to catch our sleep and consistency, and yeah, I even pray for good sleep. And then when I do Comic-Cons or big shows, I also like to customize and bring my self-care there. So like finding an empty place in the convention center to do dancing, since that helps me shake out some of my, you know, overexcited energy. I actually did make like this sleep spot under my table, which other people totally like mocked me about. Like, it's funny when you do something that people deny themselves, they like, you know, like they're like, oh, isn't that like so funny of you? I'm like, no, it's for real. Like, if you want to take a nap, come over. Because it was really helpful. I feel like I can't do a show now unless I have that, because it's just too overwhelming. It's like in my rider. And yeah, so I think I just threw a lot of stuff at you guys. So now let's do like questions and discussion, because I feel like that's like the best part, is diving into what you guys want to talk more about. And also thank you for paying attention, because that was like a lot of that was a lot of information I just threw.
It was, but it was all good stuff. Like, it definitely got me thinking about like taking a look at my life and like what are my triggers, what brings on the stress, and how do I kind of cope with that. And sometimes I find myself being snappy because I'm dealing with a lot of emotions and a lot of stuff that's happening, and I no, I need to take a step back and take a look at that. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I just realized this week another one of my sort of stress warning signs I need to add in there is that I have a weird processing thing where I will like talk to like the person in my head and think I said something, but then I didn't say it to like the real person. So I'd be like, wait, didn't I tell you about that? They're like, no, you didn't tell me about that. I was like, oh shoot, because like I was talking with you in my head and it felt real. But that only happens when I'm like more stressed out because then and I'm not as present. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just so obsessed with like noticing these patterns because I feel like it's like this carousel when we go, because also when life you're kind of it's like the same day, over like you're kind of like I don't know. I feel helpless when these patterns happen. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening again.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I try to like make note, and even a lot of my art is that like, oh, we're sad again. What would we want to tell ourselves the next time loop? Like that episode of Star Trek Next Generation where they're stuck in a time loop. So then like, okay, make that art. So the next time we're in that sad space again, we're like, oh, we have that art to like sort of comfort us, like, because we're here again. But maybe we could learn from it this time and not explode the spaceship, Like,
Yeah. Anyone here have any questions for her?
I feel like a common issue with this stuff is it's often built for people who don't like being social rather than those who do like being social. Because a lot of it is I don't get tired by hanging out around people. Honestly, it makes me feel better. And when I spend too much time alone, then it's like, oh, my life's kind of sad. I don't really do much with my life. But when I'm out doing things, it feels like I'm doing something and it means something. So I feel like that's like, because I often look at other people's and there's like, go at home, leave by a certain time, do all this stuff, just make sure you have some time alone. And I'm like, I don't know, be real. I think I benefit from having less time alone because I just enjoy other people. I'm like a flower. I bloom off of other people.
I love that. Well, mine is based on
my-
me. It's based on me because I'm an introvert. So yeah, that's like if you're an extrovert, then you would have very opposite needs in some of those things that I put down. That's why I'm like, yeah, I know not all of this will resonate because it's super customized to me. So yeah, yours would be, that you need to have more time around people and you need to be like places where you can like, so I would want to lay under a tree. You probably wouldn't want to be out and like people watching, like out in the world versus me. I'm like, I need to hide. And yeah, and you wouldn't need like social recovery time, if anything, it'd more be, yeah, I guess you'd have to, yeah, well, I don't know what you need because
alone recovery time.
Yeah. Too much time with myself.
also maybe you would need extra support like when there's isolation. Like, if your best friend is going to be traveling for a whole month, and the social connection is extra important. It's like, oh, well, if that's coming up, then what can I do to help me so I don't just like, get too isolated. So yeah, I'd be curious to see like an extroverted, oh no, maybe like oh, like what about extroverted like ADHD version of my like self-care plan? Because yeah.
Love that.
But yeah, you don't have to do my self-care plan is not like a prescription. It's more just modeling of like, this is what I figured out works for me. But yeah, any other comments, observations, questions, feelings?
So I know you mentioned like having more imaginary like people like to in your support system, like either, historical figures or people like that maybe have passed, or like people from books and stuff. I kind of almost, see them as imaginary friends and like I'm not like, isolating myself from other people. Like I do have like friends that are like physical people, but like still people say it's bad that to have is like just because like I talk to them almost like but almost not really talk to them. I just kind of when I space out they're there. Is that like necessary?
Oh, that I feel like they don't get it.
Yeah, they don't get it.
They don't get it. No, I
Yeah.
feel like that I am so never alone. Like even like tried to do like a book about all the different things and characters and entities in my head called Never Alone. I think it's one reason I thought there was like something wrong with me because yeah, it's almost like only the like IRL life, like this is the only reality. And so stuff in our head is not appreciated as being real. But I call in like gosh, I call in partners a lot. I feel like I call in different like because our imagination's pretty magic. Like when you have different sort of archetypes and characters and people that you can call on. If it's in your head, yeah, it's in your head, but also it does feel real. So like if I'm working on um like a mural project, I always call in my old frenemy Amanda because man, she always kept me on my toes. She was just like she, you know, but also super decisive. So I always bring her in if I'm doing like a big project. So like I need Amanda's energy and like what would Amanda do if she was here? Because also I'm much more confident if I think Amanda's watching. So I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to be really decisive. But then there'll be someone like, yeah, Jim Henson, who I'll call in. And so he's like my Muppet love. Also, I think he was autistic, like playful side. And then like, yeah, ancestors, friends. And I think something I want to do is actually draw a portrait of like me with like all these different people. Um, but I guess the second best thing is to take like pictures of them or drawings of them and like put them in your studio. So I think a lot of artists, I think it's classic that like David Bowie and Frida Kahlo, they're like patron saints for everyone in the arts. So I feel like it's almost like you see like their picture, like because they sort of support all of us. So I feel like those two are like prime examples, like they are like on call, like for all the weirdos. So I know it's not just me that does that. But I appreciate you bringing it up because I think, people really dismiss inner world because they just want to make sure that you're not escaping. As long as it's like supporting you in this world and it's not just avoiding this world. Because, I sort of think about even with art, like I want to do art that's not all escapism. I want it to be stayism. I want to make stuff that helps me be here, but using imagination in like a healthy way. So, yeah. So like not just hanging out talking to your characters, 24 hours a day and not sleeping. That's like not having boundaries with your imagination.
It's just like some people in my friend group think I have like schizophrenia because like I'm just like I'm almost butting in the conversation just with some like in my head and they're like, who are you? What? Or like you're mouthing words but you're not saying anything. Like what's happening? And I just am like
They just don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, that happens to me. That's also why, like, I use we for myself. This is why I'm a they, them. Because during COVID, my friend said, you're using we to talk about yourself. And it really part of my unmasking is to make more visible. Like, so my creative genius, his name is Gene. He looks like a little rainbow star. And I feel like in the studio, like I talk to Gene. I'm like, come on, Gene, we gotta edit this outline. And when I partner with kids making comics, be like, oh, Gene just piped in with a weird idea. What do you guys think about this? So I like try to actually make it visible. I talk about past tense me and future me all the time because I feel very connected with them. So I'll be like, oh, future me is going to be so excited that we did that. Or like, thank you, past tense me, for like stocking the freezer with Trader Joe's, whatever. So I definitely have embraced like making visible like my different parts. But when I was young, yeah, it felt like bad weird. It definitely felt like bad weird. But also it sort of is like, well, I guess those, not everyone is gonna get me. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. Because over the years, like I'm not everybody's flavor. Not everyone's gonna roll with like all the different characters and parts and ideas and but doesn't mean that that's bad. It just mean that, not everyone is our demographic. You need other people also who have like that creative genius.
Do you have any like books or anything that helped you with like if you had when you're maybe a teen or a young adult or like that you realized helped you? Or like just anything, it doesn't have to be books specifically.
When I was a teenager, I I hit my wall of depression right when I graduated high school. I feel like it was in college where it sort of hit me because in high school I was sort of just like a geek girl who had like my marching band friends, and I don't know, sure I was like hiding myself, but I feel like that I was like pretty thriving, you know. Also, it was like the 90s and we didn't have as much stress that you guys are dealing with. So it was a little bit less of, yeah, I feel like mental health was less of the challenge that it is now. So I feel like Star Trek Next Generation was really like my thing. So that's what I was consuming when I was a teenager. But as far as, so yeah, it's more like later that I needed to find tools to help me. And actually, yeah, graphic novels did help. I remember it was Ellen Forney's Marbles is what sort of inspired me to like, I don't know, like face some of my mental illness a little more honestly. But I tend to I read a ton of books, like, but they're more like, I guess you would say like self-help books. So I read a ton, and it's how yeah, I guess that's the best thing to help me. So one that I read recently that really changed my thinking, you know, it's definitely more of an adult book, I guess, but it's You're the One You've Been Waiting For. It's basically about developing a secure attachment with yourself and your parts, you know. So it's about like our different parts and how to like interact with the different ones, like because some of them are like wounded and angry, and other ones are like our real self. um but yeah, gosh, I feel like I have too many. I can't think of like there's like too many.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a title when you're like put on the spot.
Also, I'm thinking of all the stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just sort of did this like relationship grad school program I designed for myself because I realized I didn't know how to like be with people autistic. So it was also about like communication, conflict resolution, yeah, like attachment, there's dealing with all the parts. So but yeah, but I feel like that's probably different stuff than what you guys are unpacking. Because also we unpack different things at different times in our life. And so I'm going through like more like you know, middle-aged adult sort of stuff that I'm dealing with versus you guys are dealing. Well, it's also like music. I mean, yeah. So I don't I actually just think about like what would be a good tool to recommend to the team. I'll have to think about that. I don't have a good answer. But
I wanted to say, like, I really like the idea that you had and the choices, like you could either implode or evolve, and how like evolve is more about the positive thing, and even though you might be spacing yourself, that's still evolving from your past self. Whether imploding is like just staying stuck in the same place and like slowly getting worse. Like you're not getting worse, your mental health is.
yeah, I think accepting change is kind of a big thing that everyone in our world has trouble with. It's almost like, I think part of it is like the denial of our mortality. People expect things to stay the same versus actually everything is changing all the time. But that means that you are changing all the time. But our world isn't really set up to accommodate that. It sort of like wants you to like figure out your identity when you're like get out of school and then you're just that forever. No. So, but it's to grow and to let go of the past version of you, you kind of got to dismantle like Legos. You got to take apart one thing to like rebuild with a new thing. And I feel like people really struggle with that. Yeah, like this whole unmasking thing has been like wild because I didn't think it'd be a big deal, but it meant I had to pick apart and deconstruct who I thought I was, my friends. I lost so many relationships, in my unmasking and being like, oh, that's not, but then like new friends came in. So I feel like surrendering that idea of what you thought something was, it's the same thing in art too. With art, people often get stuck like 80% in because they're like, well, it's this thing. Oh, it's like, actually, we don't know totally what this thing is. We have to give up some control and see what it wants to be. So, yeah, and I feel like now I'm rambling on tangents. But yeah, a lot of people would rather like slowly implode than to let go of the things that they know and like lose sight of the shore and trust that something else is that they're going to reform is something that's actually better and it might surprise them. Because yeah, I'm doing all things that I never thought I'd be doing. Like, so thank goodness I decided to like, let's evolve than implode because yeah, like I'd rather complain about dealing with change than complain about like just slowly just yeah, like dying. Not to get dark and morbid, but also I think that learning how you learn is part of how you can actually stick with the whole evolving through different chapters of your life. Because if you don't love learning, you're not going to enjoy the process of changing and evolving and growing. So when you're in school, figuring out like, yeah, well, what are the ways that you do learn best? And what are the ways that you take in information? What are the things that you're curious about? So curiosity is really like driving the ship through the fog when you're like, I don't know where we're going in life. It's like the curiosity is what I trust, like in my body, like not what I think I'm interested in, but like, oh, what we like really are like, it is really calling to us. Cause like right now, like full disclosure, I'm doing my first group, holding a group cuddle jam tomorrow for the first time because for like the past year, I've been like obsessed and I can't explain it, but I'm like, I really am so curious. I want to hold cuddle workshops. And I was like, where's this coming from? We do comics. And it's like, well, we trust the curiosity. So very slowly, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do this class and I guess I'm going to read this book and I'm guessing going to, but now we're like doing it. I'm like, I'm like, where is this going? This isn't going to pay the bills. But I'm like, you know what? I trust my curiosity. And apparently this is what we want to do now. So we're just going to go with it and see where it leads us. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Being open to change.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going on, but it feels good. So I trust that.
Yeah. I think that question.
Have
If I
you,
confess about the cuddling. Oh, like secret.
have you ever like not drawn for a while and then your brain makes fun of you for it?
Yes, 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 yes. Artists have this thing, it's like we're gonna get rusty and then the gift will die. Like, I don't know, like if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And it's not, that's not correct. Because also sometimes you just need to shift gears because you can burn out if you do anything too much. So if you don't feel like drawing, yeah, don't try to force yourself to draw because that is so not gonna work. So like, I don't know, for a while, I was like not drawing, but I was like landscaping in the woods behind my parents' house, just like digging because I just needed to like sculpt land and like dig and do labor. And so that was like, instead of drawing, we were doing that. Or for a while, I wasn't drawing, I was just doing dance because I just like, I don't want to think and draw about stuff. I just want to do stuff. So I think it's actually really healthy to have breaks from, yeah, the stuff because we're not robots. And also, you're still an artist. I read a book by a local astronaut, and I loved that he was only in space for like a couple months or something. But he's forever an astronaut. And I was thinking with artists, it's like we don't consider ourselves an artist if we're not drawing like in that moment. Like, oh, I'm not making a book this right today. Am I still an author? Like, so I feel like with artists, it's like, yeah, I think of it like that with the astronaut. Like, yeah, you're an artist, even if you're not doing it right now. Like, you're still an artist. I know.
Great question.
Such good questions. Ooh,
Yeah, very good question.
there's time for some discussion. And when people are actually willing to talk, so thank you, because I know yeah, teenagers, you guys have very loud inner critics that make it hard to speak up and expose yourself. So I appreciate your transparency.
Right. And we've had lots of doodling happening while you're talking too, and I love it.
Yes, I know
Yeah.
doodling like a
Oh, look at that. What was
I don't even know how that happened.
I think when you did the thumbs up, that's when that happened.
What?
Interesting.
It's like creepy and entertaining.
Yeah.
I
I don't know if we have any more questions. I do appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us. I think that was awesome.
Wait, I
I
have
hope
one
you
more.
guys keep doodling and stay weird.
Yeah, I think
Don't let
Well,
the
you-
world don't change yourself to fit in the world. Like you change the world to fit you. Like
Yeah.
you're not wrong. Actually, the world is wrong. So I know. It's sad to say that, but at least it's not you.
right. I think Lily have one question.
Yeah.
One more.
So kind of mentioning with the inner critic thing, I always seem to have this goal person I want to be, because you always watch and you see that one person who's ready to go out there and do things, and I can usually do it around the people I know, but I always struggle getting it around the people I don't know, because I want to be that person that's like overly friendly, like, oh my God, so nice to see you, talks to random strangers, but like it's hard to fight it because you're like, does anyone judge? What if they judge me? Well, it's the stranger, this person. What do you do to like combat that? Because I know you're more. You said you're more like introverted focused, but I'm sure you have had similar struggles at least at one point.
Oh yeah. I feel like there's a few like characters I'll bring up. Well, I do have sort of like I feel like to counteract the critic, you need to have some sort of like booster character. With my autistic friends, we were saying how we really need to build, like, we're trying to be that for each other. So, and I feel like my grandma was that in my head for a long time. She was sort of the one like, you can do it. So having some sort of like inner cheerleader booster character. But then also you're talking about almost like your goal person. Oh, I love that. I feel like, I sort of think of that as like our deeper self, because I don't like the idea of like ideal self or like my better, like outside of me, like one day I'll find my better self, but I feel like deeper self, that's like more like something that's already inside of us that is accessible. And it's really just a question of how to like silence that critic so you can feel comfortable like you do around the people that know you. So I feel like, cheerleader, or I don't know, calling in like the energy of those friends that make you feel seen and accepted. But also recognizing that it's okay if people, it's hard for me to say that because when you're young, I feel like you really do developmentally, you guys are getting reflections back from your peers and others about who you are to help you figure out who you are. But it can be like funhouse mirrors sometimes. So if there are people who, I feel like there's too many tangents opening up in my head, and too many metaphors. Even though I know we're like running out of time, but yeah, calling out the cheerleader, recognizing it's okay if they're not, that it's not a bad reflection of us if they're not into us. Which is hard with, takes practice. But also just holding on to the thought of like the people who do like you. I don't know. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
The big.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think that might be all of our questions. Yeah. Yeah. Again, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. I really enjoyed my time. And I think I'm gonna take a look at my self-care plan and definitely look at that a little bit more.
oh yeah, and get a shaking machine.
You get a shaking machine for the teen area. Yes.
They call it online, it's called like a vibration plate or
Okay.
something. I call it a shaking machine.
Okay. I love that. Well, Laura Lee, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, ladies and ladies. I hope you guys have a lovely evening.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Oh, stay weird.
Bye.